All right, well, here we are. Very excited for this one. It's been a long time coming. I am joined by Gerard of Vivid Gallery and DocT, who we're working with for a very special drop, which we're definitely going to talk about, called Weapon of Mass Liberation. But before that, we've known each other for quite some time, actually, all of us. It's always good, even though I'm sure everyone who's tuning in potentially or probably already knows who we are, but let's sort of dive a little bit further back. I always like to find out, how did you sort of get to this position? How did both of you end up in Bitcoin? How did you end up in Bitcoin art? What drew you, Gerard, to creating Vivid Gallery and then Doc to be creating, well, you creating art in many different ways, but to sort of bring it to the digital realm. So, maybe Gerard go first and then we'll listen to the star of the show. And then we're also going to be joined by Nick Sainato of Gamma quite soon, who's just held up at the moment. But yeah, Gerard, pleasure
Let's
to
go.
be on a stream with you.
It's very cool to be here finally. After doing all the shows at Vivid, being in another set, it's like I feel at home, even if it's not the same gallery or the same project. We're all doing art on Bitcoin, so yeah, very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And well, a little bit of my story with Piero, so the other Vivid co-founder. We started working in Web3 around 2019, 2020. We were doing consulting for NFT projects, mainly on Ethereum. And we started working with a lot of different artists. That was a big part of the demand. I remember one very cool project we worked with a famous artist called Marcel Van Nuit. He does these crazy paintings with mixing animals and everything. Very, very cool. And that's when we realized, oh my God, we have a lot of experience already, working with artists on the blockchain. And when ordinals came in, we're already doing fully on chain on ETH. This was really our main interest at that time. Of course, big fans of what Art Blocks and GM DAO did on Ethereum. Or like, oh my God, this is the best opportunity that we have. Let's open our own gallery. Let's start our own project on Bitcoin using everything that we learn on Bitcoin, everything that we learn on Ethereum. And let's do it our way on Bitcoin. And at that time, we were also working with Harto, and that's when we started releasing the first collections, Sats, the Golden Ratio, and then came Flora Forms, where it was this big boom at that time. But yeah, really happy because I think that art belongs on Bitcoin. It's hard sometimes, it feels like we are early. There are very few people and the attention is everywhere. But yeah, very happy to work on Vivid. And I guess that today, the only thing that we can do is continue to do our work, continue talking about our art on Bitcoin. Why is it important? And that's what we are trying to do with Doc, creating a very powerful and conceptual collections, and I'm so happy that he trusts us on that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And obviously, very mission aligned what we do at Gamma and what you do at Vivid. I'm curious, after you answer this question, also like what maybe first drew you to Bitcoin, but we both agree, but sometimes it's sort of like, well, it's easy and it's hard to say specifically like why do we both feel that art on Bitcoin is so powerful? Why do we feel like it's so important? Why do you want to work with artists like Doc
Yeah.
to bring these conceptual sets and, immortalize them on Bitcoin, so to speak?
Well, it's funny because I think that a big part of the answer relies on the concept of DocT's latest work. The weapon of mass liberation. But it really does. Like to me, when I'm just checking every day the news, checking how the direction the world is taking, Bitcoin needs to become something more than just a reserve of value. It's also a place where we can store messages and values, and when you think about it, inscribing art on Bitcoin is kind of becoming a controversial act. And and to me, that's great. That's what makes it special, and that's why I think that art belongs on Bitcoin, because nowadays it seems like art has taken a weird direction, and maybe by doing art on Bitcoin, we are taking it in a useful direction. That's what I wanted to say, because otherwise, people just see art as you know, oh yeah, it's just a financial asset. Maybe that's what has become lately with all these controversial collectors that buy at millions and millions some weird artworks. But the reality is that for a big period of time, art also been extremely helpful for to transmit political messages or just to show what was the current state of society. And what better way to just inscribe these kind of things on Bitcoin, immortalizing them and making sure that this will stay forever. And if people want to study our society and what we were thinking at that moment, they can just check out what we are inscribing on Bitcoin. I hope that they will take the time to analyze, because there is also a lot of, let's say, crappy things that have been inscribed on Bitcoin. And, we need to onboard more people to inscribe meaningful things and not only have fun, because for now it seems like people, okay, we all had fun, but we can also think of Bitcoin as a deep canvas. Okay, well, what do we really want to be remembered for? That's our vision at Vivid. That's why we take a lot of time to curate the artists we work with and the artworks. But yeah, it can also be bigger than that. Not only art or different types of art, just messages, these kind of things.
I think it's really well said in the sense that sometimes it's okay that there's a lot of, let's call it crap being inscribed, because it means that the diamonds are more, are shinier. It's kind of like throughout art history, obviously there's so much art created and it's like the cream rises to the top, to use a cliche. So, if you think about it, it's, in the glass half full approach, it's almost a good thing, because it means when we see really high quality, strong conceptually strong works on Bitcoin, then they really stand out and it's an opportunity. So yeah, I couldn't agree more as well. And it is interesting seeing how lately it has almost become more controversial. It's becoming more controversial by the day when you see the spectrum of Bitcoiners who are truly speaking out about it, even though, as we know, there's so many. Oh, it is crazy, isn't it? Even though we can see that it's helping as well to secure the network and do some of those things that are, the Bitcoiners want. But anyway, we agree on that. So, Doc, welcome. For people who don't know who you are, an introduction, the man behind the mask. I love the suit. We spoke, potentially, oh God, probably like 2 years ago now. I'm not sure, but pleasure to be on a stream again with you. My Brain on Chain was a huge success. So congrats to you and Jared and the team, at Vivid on that. But who are you and how did you get into the space? Potentially even how did you get into Bitcoin, and why are you here still?
So in a nutshell, I am, when I'm not creating art, I'm actually a pediatrician, and I went through a couple of different career steps. I started out the clinical career path, and then worked in the humanitarian transitional aid field for quite a few years for German Development Corporation. Uh, Focus was post-conflict health system reconstruction, which took me to Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan and places like that. Before I then came back home, had a family started, and so the adventure lifestyle kind of had to come to an end. And of course, always liked to create art like so many people do. For me, the first baby steps in that regard were street art in my hometown. We had this little infamous group which never rose to fame really, but given my birth year and everything, those were the times when it was Banksy and King Robo and all that was happening, and uh, we were pretty close to this culture, even though here in our little German enclave on that. So we started making our stencil cuts and tagging buildings, and one train actually. We once managed to get a hold of a train, but that's sort of how it kind of started. And then later on, I more picked up the camera when things, got a bit more adult in my case, life, just to more document what was going on around me. But when I then stumbled into this whole NFT space at the time in late 2020, early 21, um, I kind of felt reminded of these very early street art days because suddenly you had these opportunities to just put something out there for the audience to see, for the audience to judge. Only that this time you were actually standing next to your graffiti and could actually interact with the people walking by. That was pretty interesting to me. And then suddenly people started calling me an artist, actually, and I minted my first piece, and my first collector actually was Delta Sauce, who saw something on the timeline, um, who kind of kicked all of this into existence. And then I was over on the ETH side of things for quite a while. Did collaborative collections and drops with Foundation and worked with Hafka on the Deca thing, and with Maker's Place I had a featured drop, and had some stuff over at Known Origin. So things were actually working out pretty nicely for me. Get into exhibitions, and one step kind of leads to the other. And then actually Ella, also known as Bright Light, who I highly recommend to follow. She also does great spaces on Mondays and Fridays together with Peng. We were in a DM group on X, an artists group, and she kind of raised this issue of, well, we are creating digital art, but are we actually thinking about what happens to this kind of digital art once a platform shuts down or someone doesn't pay for a server or whatever? And basically, these smart contracts, most of us equate to being NFTs or just having pointers to some external server. And that's not really a very safe thing of going about it. And she kind of borderline pushed me into looking into more permanent forms of creating art, and especially be it now on ETH or be it on Bitcoin, so ordinals. And so I looked into it, and the problem with working fully on chain is that once you wrap your head around the concept, it's really difficult to get back. And on the other hand, and not doing it. And on the other hand, of course, it comes with tons of limitations in terms of, file size and how to go about it. So that was a challenge. And of course, in the creative process, such challenges can be very motivating. You want to crack that nut open and somehow solve the riddle. And then I did some work, collection titled Revisiting Elsewhere on ETH, using the Afikex extension by DID. And that went fairly well and was pretty fun to do. And then I wanted to do something on the mother chain, of course, and came up with the idea of my brain on chain, something we also discussed about. So the general concept there of coming up with a very, minimalistic kind of visual, which in this case were 33 planes of my actual cerebrum, of my actual brain, which are then laser engraved into floppy disks and kind of distributed the artistic creative self to 33 collectors, who were then later involved in actually co-curating portraits of dissonance, something you see here in the background actually, which was a nice little collection we created together. And then, I got pointed towards Gamma, I got pointed towards Vivid. We talked about how to best go about it. This was like when I also learned about, the whole parent-child debate and learned there are different positions you can take on that. And then I kind of leaned towards going for it with this particular collection. And then got introduced to Girard, and that's kind of how our joint journey began. And I think for me, why creating on Bitcoin in particular is so interesting is that with my work, I think you can't really call it decorative. At least that's not the place where it's coming from. It is more a tool of messaging, sharing a particular viewpoint or just putting something up for discussion. And that's kind of reconnecting to these street art origins in terms of, the general directional purpose, intent of what I'm doing. But what I like about creating art on Bitcoin, it really never is about the aesthetic alone, at least not for me. I think the technology that underlies it, it's just so inherently political and cultural. And you always have these kind of undercurrents. So I always try, when I work on Bitcoin, to do something that respects that includes these, undercurrents of everything happening there, and to kind of be sure that it's woven into the work itself and kind of reflects that. I think art on Bitcoin deserves to be somehow medium specific in a way that can be either, generative art using just the functionality of it all, or connecting your algorithms to what's happening and what is mine and so on. You can also apply that on the conceptual level. So I think as Gerard just also pointed out, Bitcoin itself is really not just a financial technology. It's this thing that initiated this tremendous social, cultural, and economic shift which is unfolding. Yeah, we have these themes of decentralization. There's resistance to traditional financial institutions, which are expressed to that. And of course, with ordinals, also a kind of way to escape, censorship and give a ton of sovereignty actually to the artists in terms of preserving their work. So it's becoming this cultural ecosystem for me, at least in the corner of Bitcoin where I reside and Vivid resides and Gamma resides. And of course, it's super exciting if you see that there's this cultural movement or culture in itself being created from within, that uses the protocol, that is not imposed from the outside or for some institutions, but by artists, by collectors, by galleries, by platforms, and the viewers, the audience, all of that coming together. So yeah, I think, of course, as an artist, if you see this historic moment and you witness it just by being randomly born at the right time, you have this chance to actually contribute to this emerging phenomenon. And embedding cultural meaning into the protocol itself, that's something I'm very grateful for, to have the opportunity to do so and share a little bit here and there. And I think that's what this piece now, Weapon of Mass Liberation, pretty much talks to. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so tell us, I have to ask, did you end up putting the actual file onto those floppy disks, or did it just remain the print on the front of the disk?
Of course, it's also on there. Yeah.
Did anyone test?
I'm not sure if anyone tested yet, but it was pretty difficult to do so because I got these. I mean, how to get floppy disks these days, right? So I ordered a bunch, and I did all the laser engraving and everything. And then of course, I did the wrong order of things. I laser engraved them first, and then I wanted to inscribe the data. And then I noticed, well, half of it was kind of burned, and the other half, just the floppy disk, was already, damaged or corrupted, didn't work anymore. So I had to redo quite a lot of these works, and the rest just, ended up in the trash. But what I liked about that idea, and we had this precise conversation there, Brett, right? What I really liked about adding it to the floppy disk itself is these magnetic memory disks inside the floppy disk. They have an estimated lifespan of 15 to 20 years of like perfect external conditions. Now these are already old floppy disks, so you kind of have the permanent object in a physical form, which can get lost or destroyed or whatever. You have the old school digital version on the magnetic disk, which is destined to be corrupted. And then you have the permanent piece on the Bitcoin blockchain. So you have this trifecta of an artwork, parts of it decaying, parts of it actually still being there. There's one collector, shout out to Machine at this point, who was considering to just copy the content of the floppy disk every 10 years or something, which I think is a beautiful way of addressing that issue. That would be a performance piece of art in itself, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's a really interesting thing to actually, like a beautiful segue, not whether you meant it or not. But yeah, the juxtaposition of sort of ephemerality to, let's call it permanence. Nothing is permanent. We never know. Bitcoin's, the Bitcoin blockchain is about as permanent as we can kind of get. So on the spectrum, it's quite brilliant in that regard. But you mentioned, yeah, and shout out Machine, a great collector. You mentioned that performance art, you create incredible clips and you create incredible marketing materials for yourself. And from the videos to the posters to the ads to sitting here in this. I don't want to say that it's Daft Punk like, because maybe it's not that to you, but obviously everybody perceives things in different ways, and that's the beauty of art. But I love Daft Punk, by the way, so shout out Daft Punk. But your performance art is very much in your nature.
Yes, and to be fair, it came kind of naturally. One of my first PFPs on X was just an image of an AI generated image of some guy in a yellow suit with this amorphous kind of black face on it, and I thought, well, that's a good profile picture. That's kind of just how I started. It's had this anonymity to it, and the color yellow actually has a particular meaning for me personally. So at some point, I ended up having to give a video interview, and I said, "Well, how to go about that? I'm not doxed," and so on. I said, "Well, I can just get a yellow suit, which I think still had up in the attic from some carnival thing, and just got." It started out with just a black mask, really. These body morph suits, I think, is the English term for that. Which was very difficult to see through, so I added the helmet to ease things there a little bit. But in terms of the marketing material I am creating or putting out there, it's a lot of video content. And I think, again, one of the things I'm most excited about in this entire space is this interaction you have with the audience. And that's such a gift. You don't really have that anywhere else to such a degree. Like, you put something out there and you see, I don't know, it has thousands of impressions or something. And I mean, it's super difficult as an artist who doesn't, play on the social media piano to get these kind of eyes on your work and what you're trying to do. And of course, I think a video, something where you talk, something where you move, it just makes things a bit more personal. And I don't mind being personal about my work. I don't mind having as much proximity to the audience as I can possibly have. And that does help a lot. And I also think when it comes to introducing your work, you always argue, well, the work stands for itself. Fine, you can go about it like that. But if you're working more on the conceptual side of things, a good concept is only a good concept if it is understood. And of course, it's beautiful if it's completely and entirely self-explanatory. But that's not always the case. So I think contextualization of the work is kind of important. It is part of the work we do as artists. And this is kind of my way of conveying that message.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Jared, would you like to add anything to that? I know that at Vivid, you're obviously quite passionate about, as we are naturally bringing really strong conceptual work and using the blockchain to really, power the generative art, making it. I know that some people sort of make that differentiation between art on Bitcoin and Bitcoin art, but, it is something that you are passionate about, and everyone approaches it differently, and that's the beauty of art as well. But yeah, I'd love for you to talk about it, and I guess like what draws you to DocT's art.
Well, I think that first of all, I'm here to work with Doc, and then I also enjoy DocT's art. But by that I mean that it's such a great experience working with Doc, and I don't say it just to say it because he's here or whatever. I really mean it. It's crazy. And every time we end up finishing something with Doc or, just have a meeting or something, I always tell Piero, it's like, oh my God, it's so great to work with Doc because First, he's extremely talented. He's extremely smart. And he's also the kind of artist who's like, okay, I'm gonna do my stuff. I trust you on the things that I'm maybe not used to manage or whatever, and everything is extremely smooth. And it just seems like we can work together. We understand each other, and that's what I like, because I like DocT's art, and every time that I write something about it or that I ask a question about it to Doc, he's always like, oh yeah, you really understood what I was trying to say here or what I was trying to show. I'm like, okay, perfect. It's just a very simple connection, So that's what drew me to DocT's art. And everything started with this call that Scotch Fox introduced us. So thank you so much, Scotch. It was like, oh man, you need to talk with this artist. He's great. He has been doing a lot of stuff on Ethereum, and he wants to come to Bitcoin. He needs to work with you. And I wasn't expecting anything. And it was maybe a little bit more than a year ago or something like this. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, and I just saw how passionate he was about his work, and he wanted to do things right. And that's also another great point. I want to work with artists that are like, okay, I value my work. I want to do things right. I'm here for the long term. And it makes sense, we are trying, like, we all are talking about permanence, about art on Bitcoin, how is it meaningful and everything. Okay, so let's do things right. I always go with this mantra, if things are worth doing, they're worth doing them right. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's what I noticed with Doc. So yeah, everything connected. And that's why right now we are working a lot with Doc, because it's also experimenting with a different type of art. We have done so much generative art at Vivid that welcoming DocT is also kind of refreshing. Let's dive into a different type of art. And yeah, it has more material to talk about it. It feels like, generative art is very technical, and for some people this can be really interesting. But when you need to talk about it, it's kind of difficult. Here it's also difficult in a different way, because you can't find your words to really describe what you feel, what you see in DocT's art. But when you do, it's really special. So yeah, that's what drew me to DocT's art. And today we're trying to show that to the community, to the people that are collecting art on Bitcoin. And it's also difficult because DocT's art is not something that you can massively produce, let's say. It's difficult, and we don't want that also for DocT, but we want to have more people understanding what DocT has to say. And that's what we are trying to do also with these editions. We have this artwork that is great, that is very powerful, great message, and when you just look at it, you understand it with the title "Weapon of Mass Liberation" and tying that to Bitcoin. And doing 100 editions seemed completely right for us. We were like, okay, should we do more of them? But the way I see it is we are assembling an army, okay? With my brain on chain, as DocT said, we are decentralizing his brain, okay? Let's go. The artist's brain is decentralized. Then we did portraits of dissonance, 6 portraits that are now being collected by very, very good collectors, but just showing the potential of DocT's art. And here we are giving a brush to 100 collectors that I hope will continue, working on DocT's art, participating in the curation, and also drawing or explaining the message that DocT has to say with his futures collection that we have been working on already and they are coming very soon. So yeah, it just feels like there is a performance also within everything that DocT is doing. It's not a drop and another collection, another one. No, everything is tied together, and we're telling a story that is worth telling. So yeah, just when I'm explaining that, just feels like everything is connected. What we want to do on Bitcoin, what we believe that Bitcoin is here for, and what also we like in art. Doc represents that in every sense.
I love that. I think it's really well said. And yeah, Doc really does tell a story, and it looks like additions, but it's a lot more than additions. Before we have a look at Weapon of Mass Liberation and the story, what it means, why is it, and also I guess like we need to definitely dive in, and I'll have a look. We'll have a look on chain too at how it was all set up, because it's a very unique way of displaying additions and creating additions through recursion. But Doc, Gerard said it very aptly, but what is your story? Like what are you creating?
So when it comes to my work on Bitcoin, which is my full focus actually, so I really can't really look a lot left or right at the moment. It's really laser focused there. And I think, yeah, as Gerard said, this initial idea of putting the artist's mind out there, sort of decentralizing your brain, which is the place where, every past, present, or future creative impulse or idea is generated from. It's all already there. So taking collectors along, not just, as Gerard said, jumping from one drop to another and the caravan continues, but actually involving them, making sure. And I think some of the collectors, when we did this co-curation for Portraits of Dissonance, they just started then to realize that they actually held a slice of the artist now, and that does come with a responsibility, if you like that or not. Of course, no one is forced to participate, but the turnout was fantastic. It was really, like, I think we have 30 collectors, and I think 19 people actually showed up for the co-curation, and others missed it and then apologized in the end, which was entirely unnecessary. But that was a great turnout, and it's that kind of involvement. Army is a strong word, but really sort of creating this hub of people who are interested in the work, interested also in experimenting a bit more, sort of beyond the generative things we've seen on Bitcoin, the PFPs we've seen on Bitcoin, but seeing that this is something which is just in another lineage of another tradition which is happening here. So with the conceptual work I'm planning also, things will be taken much, much further. And we're always having this discussion, like, is the space ready for this and that? And my mantra is there's only one way to find out, or we have to just confront it with that, and then it will be ready. But yeah, so how things are tied together is, at this point, basically taking people along this branching tree of works which is being created, involving them as much as I can, and if they enjoy doing so, I certainly do so, because this whole new technology is based on decentralization. So having these circles of from one mind to many, and then from many back to one, as we phrased it for the co-curation of Portraits of Dissonance. That's a process I greatly enjoy. It's also scary, and because you don't really know what people come up with, and if what they share is like 100% aligned to what you wished for, and sometimes that's not the case. And there's a kind of almost brutality to that that comes with this form of decentralizing your artistic self. But I think it serves a greater good here, and it's a sacrifice I'm more than willing to make, especially when considering the things ahead.
Yeah, I love that. Relinquishing that control must have been kind of tricky when you like to, create in your way, but bringing people along for the ride, and that really like fits into the ethos of decentralization. I think that's very fitting. Have you found, Gerard, that's been something that you've enjoyed and has grown and evolved as, I guess, like Vivid's journey has progressed?
Yeah, for sure. The thing is, when the community is active, those are the best moments at work. When you have the people answering to what you're creating, giving feedback. these are the better moments, and that gives a lot of motivation to continue working. We've had that at Vivid in general, and we're trying also to to take every feedback into consideration. But through this artwork, it it's another level, because for the little story, we were doing portraits of dissonance, and we invited one of the My Brain on Chain collectors to come to the show, and he told us something that inspired us to do these editions. And that's what's funny. He said, "Oh yeah, my God, this artwork is amazing. You should do something around it." And we're like, "Man, it's the fifth time that someone says that. Let's just do it." But the fact that it comes from My Brain on Chain collector, it just felt right. It's like, okay, now the decentralized. it's kind of funny because we almost play with it, but at the end, it became true. The decentralized mind spoke back to us and say, "Yeah, guys, you need to do something like this." And I think that people are loving it. I think that for now the reactions to these editions are great. I think that people are excited to collect one. And isn't it the best case scenario where your community, your collectors become also co-creators with you? They give you so much feedback that everything becomes easy, because it's very tempting when you are creating something, any project, whatever, to do it for you, for what you expect from it, and how you will build it for you. But the reality is that you're not only building it for you. Of course, a part of it's true, but you're mainly building it for other people. And if you don't involve them, maybe you're lucky and it works, but anyway, like, you don't want only to work, you also want it to be meaningful. And what better way to make it meaningful just by taking into account everybody's feedback. So yeah, I'm very happy with these kind of reactions.
So yeah, to continue, it's interesting because if we look from the outside, we'll actually, before I'm about to get technical, let's talk about what this release, I love the technical aspect, obviously, but let's zoom out a bit. Weapon of Mass Liberation by DocT and Vivid Gallery, and we're super excited to be, hosting it and launching it and working with you to have it on Gamma. Finally, it's the three of us together.
Let's go.
But, what is Weapon of Mass Liberation? For me, it's really interesting. The fist takes me back to I think it was the Munich Olympics, that famous photo of the Black Panther salute on the dais with... there was actually an Australian on that podium, and then the guys who came first and second had their fists up in that pose. But then here we see the paintbrush is, a central figure as well. And we all know how liberating, I know that there's the word there, art can be, and artists talk a lot about how they can express themselves and create statements. And we were talking about counter art and counterculture and how inscribing on Bitcoin has almost become, I don't want to say risque, but something that not everyone's loving, like we've said. So it is this kind of like powerful statement, and we can see that in this art. So yeah, Doc. Oh well, before we get to, actually, Doc, answer that, and then we'll say hello to Nick. Kind of the timing would have been off then.
Sure, gladly so. So, if we look at the work, you've mentioned it correctly, right? So the brush in that piece, it's not really held as you might expect, being very delicate about it. It's really more raised as a weapon rather than a tool of craft. And I think for me, I greatly enjoy symbolism in my work. It's something I really like to include, especially in these more neo-expressionistic works, where I'm really coming from. So what you're seeing here from a stylistic perspective is more similar to what I also used to create back on ETH. I personally always liked this neo-expressionist kind of style or stylistic choice, because I just like how raw it is. It's crude, borderline violent, actually, when it comes to these digital brush strokes. And if you look at the neo-expressionist movement, Georg Baselitz and all these people who kind of started with it, it's this really deliberate rejection of harmony and beauty. It's not about creating something pretty. It's really concept above all. It's about confronting the viewers. And of course, within these times we are now living in, it is a good time to think about all these systems of control, domination that kind of surround us, the gatekeeping, the compliance, all that. And of course, art has always been in this tradition, or at least some streams within art history have always been in this tradition of being tied to liberation, refusal to the established things and expressing through means of artistic rebellion. If you go back, to the Impressionists in France, 1863, they had the Salon of Refusé's, so they weren't included in the official art exhibition, and then just did their own kind of thing and exhibited their work on their own. So I think these are predecessors of what we're doing. You had the Dada movement in the Café Voltaire in Zurich, Switzerland, in 1916, which was, of course, a rebellion. It was the time the First World War was going on. So it was a rebellion against war, the logic of war, order itself, actually, which was collapsing left and right. And you had the futurists, the situationists, street art, of course, all kind of rejecting authority and proposing these new cultural codes or narratives. And for me, this work, Weapon of Mass Liberation, is in that line. But instead of operating in salons or cafes or some wall in a major British city, this is actually the battlefield is Bitcoin itself now. It's the blockchain itself, and like all these predecessors or artistic movements that kind of introduced this idea of art moving beyond purely decorative pieces, but actually serving this function of a tool for free speech on Bitcoin or creating fully on-chain work, actually gave us this place to resist and liberate in a way, using this functionality of what we perceive as permanent as it actually gets at the moment, while again also addressing these core concepts of the technology itself, which is about sovereignty and self-sovereignty. And that is, I think, the realization that this is something you can own, at least within this realm or this ecosystem. I think that's kind of the pathway to liberation in a broader sense and meaning.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it's fascinating because, whether you meant it or not, like Bitcoin has become a bit of a battleground at the moment in the sense of those who are supporting core and those who are running knots, as we've alluded to, and as well, yeah, I love those artistic movements that you said, particularly Dadaism post-war. Obviously, that was a different way of creating, but it is a way for you to really create art and put your message onto Bitcoin, and no one can stop you, and it's being driven, from these different narratives, to get you to create, in the way that you do. And we can see, obviously, like you said, that fist is raised, the paintbrush is in there more like a weapon, but then there's also that sort of beautiful, I guess, positive side of it where you're like, I'm raising my paintbrush up because this is, it's not a weapon that's to hurt someone. It's a weapon, to bring joy and to bring, I guess, culture to the world. And we know that culture is something that really drives society. Ordinals or inscriptions on Bitcoin has done that. It's brought so many artists and collectors to potentially even own their first sats because of art, not because of any other reason. Like the first current crypto, Bitcoiners aren't going to like me calling it crypto, but it is a cryptographically secured blockchain, but whatever, was Bitcoin. But for a lot of people, they actually hadn't owned any Bitcoin, and culture or art was something that brought them to Bitcoin, which I think is very special. So before we move along, we have Nick, so co-founder of Gamma. Pleasure to have you on. We got that sound sorted out. We're so excited to be joined by Doc and Gerard, of Vivid, and we're co-hosting a drop with them finally. It's beautiful that we're on this space together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, totally agree with everything you said there. Amazing to be working with you guys. Even more closely, and great to hear kind of like the backstory here. I also, as I'm like hearing you kind of talk about some of the sort of like thematic elements and whatnot. It's just I'm still kind of like thinking in my head, the juxtaposition of like the My Brain on Chain release and kind of like having that be sort of like it's almost like, like embedding yourself on chain and like, almost like uh it certainly wasn't your earliest work, but it's sort of like almost kickstarting the movement in a big way, and then you kind of following it up with this. I may have missed prior discussion on that, so if I did, apologies. But I just something that I've been thinking about with respect to this release, and sort of excites me. So yeah, I just really excited for this one. Really love the sort of like uh, uh, more unique edition format that you have here. Like, yes, it is an edition, but it's really more thoughtfully done. And yeah, like Brett said, just excited to be working even more closely with you guys on the release.
So, Doc, on that note, if we look at the piece, uh, I find a few things interesting. Let's first talk about the bottom right hand corner. You've got your signature on chain. So, we'll have a look at, the actual on chain inscriptions and that family tree in a little bit, which is obviously like the way for you to really, somewhat permanently sign it. But it's something that I think we should see more. I always, you look at a piece of art in the physical world, and typically somewhere on the piece, the artist has put their signature. Is that something that you've always done, or is that something that's new?
I actually started doing so fairly early on, uh, because again, you see so much on the timeline and things get shared so often. And I also put a lot of effort into coming up with that DocT tag. So of course, once you go through that process, you kind of want to share it. And it's also, I think, a good way to to tie these different things together. You have this little constant thing which is going on there. So yeah, no, that's something you actually see in most of my works.
Yeah, and then obviously, there's a lot of negative space in this work to really, I guess, like draw the viewer's eyes to the key, component, or it's like composed in the way that that fist is so striking, and then you're like, what's the fist holding? It's the paintbrush. Tell us about the way in which you create, and then the process and how you came about creating this piece.
Sure. So I think the best way of putting it is comparing it to pretty traditional collage art. There's actually people want to see on my X profile, my link tree. There's a little studio visit for a collection I created early on, Kingdom of the Dreamer, where I go into great detail into how I puzzle things together. So the thing I ended up with is I create like bits and pieces using various AI tools, with Journey, Eden, and so on. On Eden, I actually train. It's fairly easy to train your own models once you created a bulk of work to actually do so and feed through that process. And then I'm not I'm trying to be good at prompting, but I'm semi good at prompting, so I never really end up with what I want. So what I end up with is I create variations. So you have, I don't know, 10 different fists and 20 different brushes, and then you don't really like that color, that pink color patch is somehow missing, but it's in another piece. And I basically cut it all out and then put it back together. And then, of course, it just looks roughly assembled in Photoshop. And if you use, I mean, Photoshop has also these great, generate with AI, fill in something things, but you always see that. Maybe I'm using it wrong. So what I resorted to after that was recommended from very kind fellow artists in the space is Coral, which is this actually quite old school image editing software there, and it has absolutely fantastic oil brushes. So anyone who's seeking a more painterly or almost impasto style, I can highly recommend getting that. And that I then use, for the fine work, filling in the gaps, making sure the composition just works. And as you said, with the negative space and all that, I actually start by just a pencil drawing, and that's sort of where I see this is how I want to compose things and put them together, and then just kind of build that up from these and this initial sketch. And that, of course, allows, like, if you look at what you mentioned with the negative space, or the diagonals used here, or the color focus, that you kind of have the pink dot at the bottom, but you have that stronger yellow spot here at the tenar musculature of the fist. Um, these kind of things can then very well be arranged. And the initial brush actually was blue. The handle said that it's not, it would be nice with the yellow numbers on it because it's complementary colors, but it kind of lacked the contrast with the background. So then we switched that. And again, and I suppose that's what we're going to talk about next, including these edition numbers into the artwork itself, not kind of hiding that it's an edition, or just forcing people to somehow scroll through the metadata and then realizing, oh, this is a one-off 100, but to really, boom, in your face, going, or leading with that in a way, if you like, putting it in there in such a prominent placement, making it a statement. This is not just an edition. I am one of these 100 who understand the potential of everything we're doing here as this weapon of mass liberation.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a look at that and talk about the use of recursion, and we can even talk about what recursion is just more broadly so people understand it. But what it did was it turned each edition essentially into its own one of one, because they are all then unique. And so, yeah, shout out, Gerard. I heard you allude to it in your other live stream as well, to Be a Fisherman by Artificial, which also used a similar thing, and he created all of his signatures and the edition numbers one by one. This one was done a little bit differently, where you've actually composed each of the individual numbers together, so you've kind of stripped it back even further. So kudos on that. That's fantastic. To create editions that aren't quite editions, they're more unique. They are almost one of ones in themselves, even though they're all tied together, in this group of editions, if you like. Before we have a look at that, we'll go Gerard and then Nick. It's funny, like we've talked about it a few times, but this piece, Weapon of Mass Liberation, this fist, it almost feels quite pertinent for where we're at in the journey of art on Bitcoin right now. So maybe go Gerard and then Nick, just to kind of like touch on that. It almost feels like the perfect timing to release this collection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it's true. I don't know. The way I see it is that we will all have a different brush, but we all, wear it in the same way and send the same message. And that's why also we really wanted to have these edition numbers as part of the artwork. Because as you said, each one is a one of one, because there are so many people that value this message and that also want to share it, that this artwork couldn't go to just one person. How many collectors, artists, people around here want to share the same message that we are sharing with this artwork? I don't know, I guess more than 100. But the thing is, there are not that many. And if you get one of these brushes, you can share that and being proud about it and saying, okay, I'm number whatever 99, and I want to share the message of Weapon of Mass Liberation. And yes, in a way, right now we are in a moment where maybe we need to share that message, and we need to wear that proudly. I don't know. The thing is, there are not a lot of collectors that will value artworks right now for their fair value. We're in a market where, to me, this artwork is not, it's difficult to value it, but I'll be ready to pay a lot more for this artwork. But that, once again, that wasn't the purpose of this. It's more, introducing more people to DocT's artwork. So it was kind of difficult to find a compromise between all that. I think that we did. And my point with all of this is that collectors that will get a weapon of mass liberation, for me, it's more like the first step. Okay, you got your brush, and now we're going to draw together. Now we're going to build art on Bitcoin as we want to build it. And this need to be with a very small group. I like this theory of great movements are drawn by small groups with deviant thoughts, they all have very strong thoughts, very different from everybody else, but they are a small group, and those are the people that can really make some change. Maybe that's what we need right now. Maybe what we need on Art on Bitcoin to really push that movement forward is just a small group of true believers, of people that really think that we can make things right and we can make things differently here on Bitcoin. And I hope that we will make it. I hope that the 100 collectors, myself included, will be able to to just continue that movement. And if there is someone we need to do this with, it's DocT. Like DocT, there are a lot of collectors inside of Vivid that believe that DocT can be the forefront of this movement. So yeah, we'll see. But maybe you're right. I hope that you're right, and this is the perfect moment to release such a collection. We'll see.
Yeah, well, for sure. In regards to hopefully, people who collect it, I think that it will be in demand, but time will tell. However, also in terms of the actual artwork, the actual concept, it feels timely. I don't know. It's almost like it was meant to be. We've talked about Bitcoin has become this, bit of a battleground of late. And then, Doc has, and with you guys, and we'll have a look again, I've mentioned a number of times at how it looks on chain, brought it to Bitcoin. Nick.
Yeah. I think perhaps what you're kind of getting at, Brett, is we've had sort of, I almost feel like there's this like parallel track of this, let's just say strife of some kind, like just kind of difficult feelings, and I've certainly felt it myself, just even in personal life and whatnot. Like there's just this weird sort of feeling in the world, like Aaron, Ordinal's protocol would probably say it's because it's eclipse season, but like it's there could be a number of reasons for this, but I think like I say this like parallel track because I think within Bitcoin you have this infighting going on where you have, core and knots and arguing over spam and filters, and so I think that on Bitcoin it's very apropos that we say like, hey, like I'm gonna, stand up to this and I'm gonna bring my paintbrush. You might not want me to paint on Bitcoin, but it's here and I'm gonna graffiti it. And so I think like, if that was it, that would be a great reason to release this. But I think also you sort of have this external to Bitcoin, like macro geopolitical, socioeconomic kinds of just, different things going on in the world, and lots of just like instability in general. And usually like these movements, you have this, this like driving counterculture voice that, kind of stands up and takes a stance on something. And so anyway, I think it's perhaps maybe that's what you're getting at, Brett, but it feels like in those ways it's very apropos, like in terms of like the name and the feeling I get from this artwork. And then of course it's incredibly well executed, and I agree with a lot of the things that Gerard, you were just saying in terms of like maybe for the very reasons that we're talking about, in the macro sense, it might not be like the most lucrative time to release a collection, and hopefully it's properly valued by collectors. But at the very least, like it is a great time to sort of like amass your army and have something that's that's very accessible and gets people like, kind of revved up and excited for what can come next. So yeah, I'm excited about it, and I think it just gives me a good feeling. Like it has that, like you almost like I almost need to like make the motion to even describe what I'm trying to say here, because it's the perfect like icon for the feeling that maybe sometimes lacks like even the words to describe it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like it. It just strikes me as iconic. We have, one of the parents or grandparent. I'm not sure where in the family tree this is, but Weapon of Mass Liberation. The title. We've got both of your logos on it, which is awesome. We can see that it's then co-parented by
Also, I have
Vivid
to jump in
and
really
Doc.
quick. I had no idea, Doc. You mentioned like you spent a lot of time on your signature there. I didn't realize it was animated until just now.
Nor did
That's really
I.
cool.
Nor did
That's why
I. So
people need to go on chain. There is a
they
lot of
do.
information on chain, guys.
There is. I've gone through this. It's just I even in preparation for this stream, I was going through this and still like didn't see the pulsing yellow circle, which is really cool. You can
Nice.
see the yellow in the artwork. It's almost like DocT drips through his whole artwork. So his brain's on
True.
chain, but there's just like DocT through all this. So we can see we obviously have all of the additions, but let's look at the assets, because that here is what I'll click on all. And then, maybe Gerard and Doc, you can tag team here and talk us through what are we looking at here? What have you done with this piece?
Well, Doug, how do you want to do that?
Yeah, I know I've put you on the spot. Maybe let's
Okay.
go. Maybe both you can both of you go mic off and
Uh,
just riff, have a
I'll
conversation.
start. I'll start.
Okay.
The idea here, the thing is, from a technical point of view, to make editions like we wanted to do them, by integrating the edition number inside the artwork, you first need to inscribe the original artwork. Let's say, right? So yes and no. Actually, there is a tricky solution to that we will use, I guess, in the future. But for this particular release, it wasn't that interesting. So the way we did it, just inscribe first the original artwork, and that's why the assets parent is before was inscribed before the editions parent, because every edition uses the original artwork in a recursive way, plus the corresponding digits. And that's where DocT made a great job. He created this 10 digits plus the slash and the hashtag. And those are also custom made by Doc for this artwork. And maybe Doc, you can explain a little bit about that, because you tried, right, the different options, and this one felt the better one to include them directly in the brush.
Yeah, so we actually went through various different suggestions there, or drafts and attempts, and it's this stage of the process where you have this moment, this can work, and then that moment passes fairly quickly, and you start over again. So we had multiple different ways of going about it. One was more discreetly, just a line of the numbers or the digits just above this horizontal line of the signature tag. Then try to do something where it looked semi-engraved, like with a 3D kind of effect, or adding depth to it into the brush handle. And they said, nah, maybe something more made by hand would actually do this more justice. A suggestion actually brought up by Giraffe. So shout out to you here in that regard. And I did create an alphabet. I think over a year ago for a Deca piece, which I created. It was an animated piece which had the letters in there, and also for some of my animated pieces on Foundation, which had text included. And but I didn't have the numbers, so then I had to go back through the process and get those numbers done. And then yeah, we just arranged them on the brush, and then that kind of looked too clean. So if you zoom into the actual artwork, or into one of the editions, you see that we kind of added like another layer,
Yeah,
um, which I think is also somewhere in here. You
it's
can
the
barely
last
see
one.
it.
It's
Yeah, the
hard to
last
see,
one
but
I was gonna
it's the
ask,
last
what
one.
is that
right
that
next to the
little?
hashtag. I think
The
it's
last
there's a
one,
little,
yeah,
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 that
it's got
one.
like a
it's
little.
this yellow little smear which just goes over the 100, so the edition number to just embed it more plausibly and more realistically into the brush handle.
Yeah. So it's like recreating, DocT's processes of collage and everything, but directly on chain with recursion. And for us, one of the most important part also was to minimize the amount of data that we used for various reasons. Of course, you have the fee situation. That's one thing. Well, here it's not really relevant. Like it's not that big of a deal, but it still is. Like if you can find a way to minimize costs, let's do it. But also since the beginning, that was something very important at Vivid. Even in the way that we do generative art, we minimize the encryption cost, even if generative art is really cheap to inscribe on Bitcoin. But we even optimize that part of it since Looming Emotion and so on. And so here the idea was, okay, why inscribing the 100 edition numbers like you did, guys, with artificial, and it's great, but here it was possible to recreate what we wanted to recreate with that process. There will be some time where you cannot do it. You need to have every edition number or every asset because it makes sense. But here it didn't make a lot of sense. What we wanted to create it was exactly this. So okay, you can minimize and only have 11 inscriptions instead of 100 or 12 inscriptions. And I guess that's also part of the message that we wanted to send here. As you said, we're talking about all these people are complaining about ordinals, about the data storage. Well, to be fair, I think that we also need to understand what they're saying and kind of acknowledging some part of it, even if we all know here that it's worth it and it's not that big of a deal, etc. There are all these arguments. Well, if we can do our part, let's do it. It's a little bit like not being a fully ecologist, militant, or political, but still doing your own small things. Like everybody wants to go to a beach that's clean, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to eat meat, whatever. But here it's a little bit the same. Okay, we are pro ordinals. We want to continue to build this movement, but we can also optimize what we are doing here and send kind of a good message. Hey, guys, we hear you. We're also going to try to optimize everything that we're doing and only inscribe relevant stuff. And that's also why sometimes I have this message about, guys, there is a lot of crappy stuff. It's not about what you want to sell. It's more about, we have this amazing tool. Let's just use it to inscribe meaningful stuff. And when we're doing it, let's do it right. So that was all the intention behind it.
Yeah, I have to also say, like, despite your comments on making it very like thoughtful file size wise, this is by no means a low resolution artwork. Like I have a 4K monitor. It's like 27 inches wide. Like it's a very big screen. And I can pull it up and literally fill my entire screen with it. And it is high resolution, yet it is fully on chain. So I think you guys have done a tremendous job at kind of balancing the having it be like thoughtful and not wasteful, but also for an artwork that you want to have people cherish and feel like it was, thoughtfully done in, I certainly like, I was really impressed because Brett had pulled up his screen and obviously he's looking at what is really tiny little numbers blown up to be large. And obviously if you take any image that's supposed to be this small and blown up, it can start to
Exactly,
get
yeah.
it. It started to look like what a lot of inscriptions look like, when they're at their max resolution. And so I was kind of curious and pulled
Yeah.
open the full artwork, and I was like, wow, that is like it's very big.
Yeah. No, for sure. That was also intentional, So you have this the main artwork is at high resolution, and every digit is proportionally inscribed with the resolution that it's meant to be with the other one. So it means that if you make the artwork bigger than it's supposed to be, the resolution of the digits also increase proportionally. And the thing is, you are inscribing editions, but every edition is referenced back to the main artwork. So you are only inscribing the main artwork once. So let's go, put some fees on it so everyone has a good quality image. And that's also, sometimes I complain about it because I see some of the artworks and I'm like, guys, I know that maybe it's difficult at the time, maybe you don't want to spend a lot of money, whatever, but you're inscribing this forever, and this is going to be one of your first, if not the first for some people, artworks that you are inscribing on Bitcoin. Come on, like, how do you want to be remembered? And having a good quality artwork, for me, it's the minimum. But then you go to another level. You also go to the metadata. Okay, what are you adding to the metadata? Doesn't mean that you need to put tons and tons of information, but just taking care a little bit of it, because there are some people that are going to look at that, and if they want some information, well, at least they have a minimum. And it's so simple to do that. But to me, it's so simple, and it takes like just very small time, that for people not to do it, it must mean that they are either lazy or they just don't care enough, for me at least as a collector, to collect their work. It's not that it has zero value, but come on, I want to collect something that I've seen that people took the time to do it right. So yeah, that's a recommendation for the artists. Sorry if some artists are not doing this, but like, come on, guys, they use the protocol in the correct way.
I think it's a. Oh, sorry, Nick. I was just going to say, I think it's a good point in that it's a learning experience. Like, there are artists who've been around for quite some time who also either perhaps didn't know or didn't realize how to do it.
Sure.
Like, it's always an education thing. And so, Jared, I agree. I love it. Like, I just pulled up the metadata here, and I think it's super important in the sense that in time, because we say that it's going to be on Bitcoin forever, define what forever, but it's going to be on Bitcoin for a long time. We're not going to be around for that amount of time potentially. Well, who knows? And don't know what sort of humanoids we're going to be. Doc looks like he will. He looks very human,
Yeah.
But more my point is that context is going to be so important. So yeah, Nick, and then Doc, because I'd love Doc to talk about the context.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think it's a good point you bring up in terms of especially on like the quality and like the file size that a creator is inscribing, and I think it's like a it's an important thing to bring up in the sense that I see a lot of artists who are maybe just trying to get their footing, and to your point, it's like, come on, like, really, it's gonna be here forever. Like, make it last, and make it beautiful, and make it something that people are really gonna cherish. And I think like one recommendation I'd have is, I've seen a lot of creators who will release, let's say, 3 or 4 different artworks, and they're at a lower resolution as a result, because they can't necessarily afford to get like a really high resolution one inscribed. I'm with you, Gerard. Like, I would rather you focus on getting that one artwork that you love the most and inscribing that as high resolution as you can get it, because I just think that so many people will appreciate that more, and it like carries all that much more weight and specialness to it. So and I think people will recognize that. Like, it's I always use the analogy of, you're inscribing a Bitcoin is like it's a difficult thing to do. It's a difficult medium to use. And it's like, it's like if you think of a graffiti artist who graffitied on like the center of a bridge, like that is suspended, however much above the bay or whatever. And this is like a lethal task that they're going out and doing this. But they kind of want to like leave their mark on the world and in that spot. And and that's the cost of doing so on that medium. And
I
if
agree.
you went out there with, I don't know, like a colored pencil instead of full set of gear, then it wouldn't make the
Yeah.
same impact. So
Great
yeah,
analogy.
I
I love
think
that.
like it's of course a balance, but like I do think that even with this artwork, like you brought up like the market, and like it's in a weird spot right now. I think it was the better decision, for example, to go super high quality, super high concept, super, you know, thoughtful execution, and make it something that can still be accessible, but at the standard of care and quality that is important to you.
Hmm.
Versus, another route you could have done is made 100 different really low quality ones that are like 10 pixels by 10 pixels, and
True.
and
Some
and
variation.
maybe that could have communicated a similar idea. I don't know. But so I'm with you that at least as a collector, this
Mm.
is sort of something that I really appreciate, and
It would
especially
have worked
knowing how
better,
hard it
but that
is.
wasn't the intention, like that's it's, the thing is, we really want the work to be remembered for what it is, and there are so many artworks or projects that are just hyped, and what's behind it, it's not that good. That one day truth will be spoken, and people will also see that. And I love the analogy that you said, because okay, guys, you are taking so much risk. You're inscribing your art on Bitcoin. What are you doing? There are almost no market already. You are super early. Come on, let's go. Let's do it right. It's yeah. I really like what you said about the graffitis. I will use that if you don't mind.
Go for it. Yeah, I forget who I was talking to about this. There was like it's like you hear people say something in a Twitter space at some point, and at this point I'm like, I don't know if I came up with that or if I heard that from someone else. I honestly don't know, but I was
For
talking to
my
someone
regard,
like,
you are the one who created that, so
yeah,
I will
exactly. No,
I will
the joke
quote
was
you.
that like I was talking to someone like a month or two ago, and they said, "Oh, I love that analogy," and I the same thing. I'm like, maybe I came up with it. I don't know. It's just, it's one of those things. So
Take the
anyway,
credit. Take the credit.
yeah, whoever inscribes it first, I guess, can really show like proof
Exactly.
of proof
Yeah.
of ownership.
I would claim that though. That's a great analogy. So yeah, Doc, after listening to all of that, your feelings, you've added context, we've got all of this recursion, this beautiful tech behind it, this high crisp quality art. It's sending a message. They're all one of ones in their own right, but they're tied together like an army, like a team. It's also fitting.
Yes, well, thank you first of all, very much for all the thoughts shared here on that. It's becomes clear that I think that the both of you really looked at it prior to this conversation. You all came very well prepared, which is of course great and superb to witness. I think with what I would like to pick up on a little bit is the market, and why is work there in such a different quality, and of course there are different standards people adhere to. For me, there is, leaving all this conceptual ideas, putting those aside for a moment, there is craft to it, craftsmanship to it, to what we're doing here. And of course, this is something where I always like to compare, since we are theming this now, talking in analogies. I kind of like to compare it with, a workshop where you create a bronze statue. So if you want to go into these technical details, of course, for us artists, it's not always easy to go through all these steps all by themselves, which is great to have the opportunity to actually team up with devs who sort of have the technical expertise on that, and then you have your creative ideas and what you would like to do and experiment around. And of course, you come up with things a dev would have never come up, or a dev suggests something you never really thought about, which makes a lot of sense, which you can actually integrate into your overall concept, as in this case. So this working together, having almost a multidisciplinary creation, really workshop setting for the Great Forge, where everything is happening. You have the metal worker, you have the guy who does the clay casts and all that, and everyone's just buzzing around until finally the work is finished, and we just hope it doesn't break. That's kind of the comparison I like to make, how all of these things come into being. In terms of the quality standards we should adhere to, that's really something I feel very, very strongly about. Because again, I mean, I have this tiny little daughter, and she was already born when ordinals were invented, if you like. So this is super new. I know, we are early is a bit of overused term in our space, but we are, and we are still in this process of defining what art on Bitcoin can actually be. Uh, this hasn't been, framed yet, or there's no framework for that, which is done at this point. We're actively creating it with the artists who are at this point in time and are putting things. I feel this strong sense of responsibility even to really make sure that I best represent what this can be and what can be done. And that's kind of even more important than the timestamp on it, if you like, at this point. If someone comes next year and does something incredibly better, that should be valued more. But all I can do is that for this time of this whole history which is unfolding here in front of us, to just really give it our best. Because as an artist, I help in defining what is possible and what quality standards can be achieved. Collectors then kind of respond to that and kind of apply the filter in terms of was that actually that mark achieved or not? Did you really sort of manage to raise the bar a little bit, or come up with something more innovative in terms of how to approach an edition here, or play on something, modify something which came before in this particular way? So I think that's something where for our entire Art on Bitcoin, AOB movement, the great filter of time has not yet been applied. I think you mentioned this: the cream rises to the top, or however it is phrased, and that is something which is still years ahead of us. This is the time for experimenting, for trying your best, but experimenting should always happen at the top of what's possible, and you shouldn't really resort to anything less than that. Because if you just want to put something out there, if you just want to, express yourself in a way, there are kind of other mediums you can use for that, for something which is like very sketchy or sort of in a draft state. I think it needs a bit of explaining why that should be preserved on the mother chain, taking up the block space and all of that. And which is also why I think what Gerard pointed towards with this whole discussion going on, and the conflict even within the Bitcoin community. I do think it's the right way to go about it, to at least be considerate about saving block space and making things as small as possible. And we mustn't forget all of this also regarding artists who work on ETH Layer 1, for example, where also fantastic things are happening. This idea of compressionism, as it's called, that's really strong. So, and compressionism, for all of those listening who are not maybe that familiar with the term, it's not just about downsizing your JPEG so that it's small. Then you get a pixelated whatever if you zoom into it. It's about finding tools, finding ways to make the work and function and fulfill its purpose in a way that comes with a small file size. And that's a very different thing. So with this, for example, particular piece, I mean, the gesture is as simple as it gets. It's super rudimentary in a way. So I like to always sort of from the visual apply this concept of compressionism to the concept itself. Be it with my brain on chain, be it now with this weapon of mass liberation, just condensing things down to the most purest, most simplistic form. And that's not easy to do. Like wild visuals with lots of detail. Sometimes it's easier sometimes to go that route, at least for me, than to strip away and to find that sweet spot where it's still readable, but not overloaded with anything unnecessary. So it has this pure essence of what you're trying to do. And that can be sort of reflected on the conceptual side, on the visual composition, on the aesthetics you choose, but also then, of course, on the technical level and with the technical details. And I personally believe it should be applied to all of these levels, the conceptual, the visual, the artistic translation, and the technical level. And for the latter, I'm tremendously grateful to have bumped into Gerard and Pierrot in particular as well, who do a fantastic job in kind of guiding me through that very, very technical jungle of affairs. So that's a beautiful pairing which came into being here.
Yeah, well, I think it's been a wonderful discussion. I think that's a beautiful kind of like full stop, a great place to end it, Doc. I think it's, big shout out and kudos to Gerard and Piero and their team at Vivid. Like I said, very much mission aligned with what we do at Gamma. It's great to see someone else really championing art on Bitcoin in a space where it's highly, highly needed, and we all see and know and understand that really at its core is the value of it. I know, like, we've heard Casey say, we've heard Charlie Spears say it, like that when Ordinals first came to be, I guess like the Gammas and the Vivids of the world is what they had kind of like envisaged. Obviously, it's a free market and people can do whatever they want, and that's also the beauty of it. But, on that note, Gerard, and then Nick, and then we'll finish with Doc. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I guess like any final and closing thoughts.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the invitation. I would like to close just by saying that Weapon of Mass Liberation really connects with a lot of things. It's from a conceptual point of view, it really fits the actual context, whether it's on Bitcoin, as you said, societal, everything. So all the collectors, I guess, that will carry the message with us. But also, as we showed with the process, the execution, to me, it's also an invitation, and also regarding the price and the supply, it's super affordable. By the way, like if you want a piece by DocT, just jump on this, because I don't think that there will be such an affordable occasion to collect something by Doc, but yeah, with this, the process and the execution is also an invitation for people to step up a little bit. And it's not a message about, oh, look, what we are doing is great and some other people are not doing that great job. Actually, that's not true. There are other people that are doing better job than us. And just look at what, for example, Lemon and Ordinali did. Great work. So there are other people doing great stuff, but the attention is not equally driven towards the great job and the other one. So I also think that people should, think of that. And as a collector, as the people that put the sats and that give the sats to the artists, you also have a responsibility, because we are building something great. And yeah, just by giving the energy towards maybe the right people and asking a little bit more for people, for the artists, that's a way where we are all going to elevate ourselves with each other. Like, okay, let's push everybody, so we create something worth living, So that's also the invitation. And that's also why we wanted to do this with you guys, because you have a massive audience. You have a lot of artists that created something with you. So yeah, I hope that this collection will also, get this effect.
Yeah, I just really really excited about the release. I'm best of luck to you guys. You deserve a rapid sellout after this really clearly what was a big effort to sort of put this together, and I hope it resonates with people. It certainly resonates with me, and I'm just of course excited about this release, but also excited to continue working with you guys, moving forward. It's just really good to have, as Brett said, like, people who care about this kind of thing and who care about the topics that we're talking about. It's important, and they're discussions we should be having, and I'm impressed with the execution. It's very well done. So best of luck.
Thank you.
Yes, also huge thank you and shout out to all three of you for all of this coming together so nicely. You work on these things for so many weeks and months, and then you suddenly see, all the pieces falling into place, and it's happening. Yeah, and that's always a wonderful moment. It's also always a bit scary because you never really know what will happen. But I feel fairly confident about what's about to happen here. And I also really, really like the ideas, as we mentioned, there is dissonance within the Bitcoin space, and here we are showing unity in this, trifecta relationship now with Vivid and Gamma and my humble self here coming together, which I think is a strong statement in itself, right? Also somehow relating to the artwork and regarding the work itself, regarding the attention where it is at, where it might be. I firmly believe that looking down the line of the future I anticipated, I don't think history will ask if art on Bitcoin mattered. I think it will ask if you were a part of it and when you understood it and when you joined it. And perhaps with this kind of entry into that, we'll have a couple of new people and new folks onboarded. I was onboarded with Sense. That was the first ordinal I collected, where Gamma had a tremendous part to play. And sometimes, and then all of these other things happen. So who knows? Maybe the next DocT is going to be one of the weapon of mass liberation collectors, having their ordinal collection debut and going down that rabbit hole.
That'd be amazing.
I love that. Well, maybe should we finish with the, is it a little bit cheesy if we do the weapon of mass liberation?
Just need the brush.
I need a brush. I actually have one of my kids' paintbrushes not far from me, but I'm not going to get up and go get it.
Got a pen close enough. No.
Yeah. But yeah, once again, yeah, exactly. It is. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for your time. This was a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Brett, for hosting. Always a fantastic interviewer. I'm continually impressed by you as well. We're grateful to have you.